Hi everyone, welcome back to our 4 o'clock session. And this is, I kind of put this session on a bit tongue-in-cheek, but we'll delve into whether there is actually an issue or not. Is where are all the men? And I think specifically talking about sustainability in the home. So we had some very, I don't know whether we should call them brave, but we had some men put their hands up and volunteer to be part of the chat. And actually, this is our only gender balanced panel, I think, that we've had on the festival. All of the others have been completely women. And Libby's got lots of expertise in sort of behaviour change and all that thing as well. So she's giving us her perspective. But I'll let you guys introduce yourselves because you'll do it far more articulately than I will. So Matthew, Matt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Matt Sawyer, GP, working in the north of England, but been interested in sort of environmental and sustainability issues for probably 30 years. Everything from sort of, teenage activism and vegetarianism as of back in the day, through to joining the Newbury Bypass when at medical school. And then I think the same for a lot of people have come into parenthood and done the little things that we're able to do, whether it be reusable nappies and everything else. So that, so the sustainability at home, but I also do sustainability at work as well.
Cool. There's just a comment in the chat, Matt, that you're quite quiet. So I don't know if your headset, you said you're probably fed up with wearing your headset doing telemedicine all day, but I don't know if that will make a difference at all. Ed, over to you.
Well, hello everyone. We were saying just before we came on that I feel like almost like the odd one out here because I don't have an inspiring tale to tell of greenness. I have worked in the events industry most of my life, which means that I have spent a lot of time on planes going all around the world to build things that stay up for about 3 days and then ripping them all down again. So start throwing your virtual rocks now. But I guess I would consider myself to just be an average chap, an average guy. I am married. I have 3 children, and my kind of, I guess, green journey really came about inspired by my children. So. Try and keep it pretty short, but my daughter Freya was phenomenally taken by the orangutan advert that Iceland did, which obviously was I think a Greenpeace video originally that they commissioned for Iceland, and it just captivated her. And at the time she was about 6 or 7. And then about 5 in the morning on a Sunday morning, I heard all this noise in the kitchen downstairs, and I came downstairs and she had taken every single item of food out of every single cupboard and had checked if it had palm oil, and if it did, it was by the bin. And so we then had a long chat about, well, chucking it away doesn't help either. but let's talk about it. And she was so worried about the orangutans, and Daddy, we're doing this and it's everywhere. And I just thought, do you know what? Why I let the complexity of life, the busyness of having to pay the bills and put food on the table and do all these different things, distract me from bigger issues because I've never got enough time, or we recycle and we do this and we do that, but actually we don't do enough. And Freya sort of inspired me. And still now, every time we go to a supermarket, she's 10 now, so every time we go to a supermarket, she picks every single thing up. And she goes, no, I know you like it, Daddy. So as soon as she discovered that biscotti spread is now made with sustainable palm oil, she was like, yes! That, and the fact that I think that Pringles, Texas barbecue Pringles, don't have palm oil. So which is basically what she live on. So she inspired me really, and we looked at it a lot, and I tried to find out how we could be more sustainable. She wanted to do it, the children wanted to do it, we all wanted to do it. And as we went through it all, I found the information online, if you don't know where to look, and if you're not part of a community like this, which we very much were, I was just a bloke going on to Google trying to find out an answer. And the mutually conflicting information you find out about what's good, what isn't good, what you should use, what you shouldn't use, was so difficult that I just thought my natural reaction was, let's go and look at an event. So we went to go and look for an event that we could all go to that had everything all in one place, and there wasn't one. And I thought, well, maybe this is something I can do. So I spent a year doing research across a 28,000 control group of vertical sectors of this, that, and the other on Generation Z and millennials and families and everything else to find out what people thought. And the reality, what seemed to be that most people, a bit like Jarvis was talking about in the session earlier, is that there's the people here who seem to be a long way down the line, but there's a lot of people who would consider themselves everyday folk who want to make a difference and haven't got a clue how to do it. So we need to be that voice. So the results were that 96% of people wanted to live more sustainably, and only 9% had a clue how to actually go about it or felt equipped to do so. And so I launched the One Earth show as a sustainable event, large scale event, which obviously we're working with Jen on, which we're really thrilled about, and indeed working with Jarvis on. But to try and bring people together so that we can open it up to the mass audience of people who want to know more. And using the connections that I had, I managed to get the Daily Mirror to back the campaign, and the NEC, and most of the Liverpool Echo and Leicester Mercury and Birmingham Evening News and all this sort of stuff. So that's a very long introduction. Talk amongst yourselves. Thanks very much.
No, I think it's brilliant. And for anyone who was on Jarvis's talk this morning, which was how to make sustainability mainstream, he was saying, you know, we need to kind of find our purpose. So, you know, reconnect with why we're doing what we're doing, I guess. But also then, you know, find that one thing that you're good at and think, how can I do that, you know, for the benefit of the planet for the next 10 years? And that feels a little bit like what you've done. Like, you know, your thing that you're good at is putting on events. And actually with One Earth show, you've kind of pivoted that so that it's, you know, it's your event expertise, but now it's a sustainability one. So yeah, that's really lovely.
What's really fun is we've launched with a partner, and the first 10,000 seedlings of our One Earth forest is now on the ground in Tanzania. So that's working with a UN accredited tree planting source, and we're employing people and we're helping the environment, and then a mixture of kind of pine and fruit trees that are fitting for the location. So we're trying to plant trees as we go. So that's just happened. We just got the images back of that going in. That felt quite real and like you were actually doing something.
10,000 trees.
10,000 so far, and then our aim is to try and get 100,000 planted in the first year, and then we'll just continue to add to it.
Amazing, fabulous. I'll have to get. I don't know if you can. You're in the group, Ed, but if Ali or someone can share those images as well in the group, that would be really lovely to see them of the forest.
Yep.
Libby, over to you.
Hello. So I'm here with my people management hat on. I specialise in brains. I focus on why do people do what they do. And obviously in this subject, that is a huge part that we need to really get a handle on, because there is this gender gap of the number of females that are passionately active in sustainability compared to the number of males. So it's lovely to see you two chaps here today, because it is such a huge imbalance, and there's loads of data around why that is. So I work as a business psychologist and change management. I'm founder of Tame Your Brain, which is a program to either do personal transformation or business transformation. And what I've learned over the years is that people only do things when there's a strong enough why. And if there's not a strong enough why for people, can't move them, and moving people, not process, where we're stuck with sustainability. So I'm one of the directors of a brilliant group called Vet Sustain, run by the fabulous Laura Hyam, and we're trying to move sustainability up the agenda. We're working really closely with Anna Judson, president of SPIVS, to try and make it a thing for the vetty industry specifically, and reduce our single-use plastics, reduce this ridiculous consumption. Things like anaesthetic gases are in focus. I do some work with Ellie West of Davies, who's really, really hot on where we can start to change the picture at the moment.
Brilliant. Just jumping straight in on what you said, Libby, because that was going to be my first question. I perceive there's a big gender gap, because in my main Facebook group of like 16,000 people, it's probably 95% female. In the festival pop-up group, I think when I looked the other day, it was about 85% female. And is that you know, and obviously, you know, I talk to mums in the playground and all those kinds of things. So I'm, you know, am I just in this different bubble and my perception is skewed because of that? Is there,
No,
or is it because, you know, a lot of stuff I do is on social media and maybe more women are on social media, especially Facebook?
Yeah.
So is this just my perception, or is there a gender imbalance?
There is a huge gender imbalance. There's a study carried out in 2018 by Mintel, which showed the actual stats, if you want the stats on it. There are three main reasons for this that have been proposed. And one of the biggest is that there is this green feminine stereotype. There is this perception that it's a female issue. There's also, unfortunately, still a massive imbalance in that the household chores are mostly done by females. And guess what? The biggest industry area is, you know, green products tend to be marketed towards the people that are going to put them off the shelf. So there is a font use, there's a colour use, there's a branding use. A really classic example of that is body wash. When they wanted to get men to buy body wash, they had to completely change the packaging. Same product inside, but the packaging wasn't ever going to sell to men. And they've done it with cars as well. They've done, there's a really interesting study that was, I think, 2016, that was done around the changing of just the name of a car. They didn't change anything else. But in China, a BMW experiment was run where they changed the name to mean, it was an eco car, but they changed the name to mean protection, which is a very classically masculine piece. Instantly, sales went up in men. And that's really fascinating to me. And there's a couple of reasons as to why that is, but yeah, we can talk about that.
And another study I saw, or a couple of pieces of sort of stats that I found really powerful, are that there's a statistic that I think about 60% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from household consumption. So obviously, you know, from the food we buy to the how we travel, all those kinds of things. But then another Mintel study from a few years ago saying that women make something like 80 to 90% of household buying decisions. So then actually, yes, we can be really pissed off that, like, you know, oh God, all the, you know, there's been no feminism, no revolution. We're still in charge of all this drudgery at home. But actually, I feel that that's really empowering for women and puts us in a really strong position to make a difference. But does that gender gap translate into the sustainability professional world? Because I saw, I can't remember who it is, but they produce a top 100 kind of waste experts every year. And it came out recently, and it was 38% female, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, and if I can just put my business hat on for that, there is, you know, I'm really passionate about helping females move into leadership roles. It's something I do a lot of executive coaching with females as they work their way up the career ladder. There is still a massive problem with females doing this, lean in being the classic book from Sheryl Sandberg. But, you know, females don't push themselves forward, and there's lots of reasons for that. And equally, males are more rewarded for looking for leadership. It's still seen as negative traits for the feminine identity, and gender is massively affected by our group membership of where we choose to place ourselves, but also our way we portray ourselves. And unfortunately, leadership qualities in females are negatively perceived still, okay. Even now.
So is it right to say that there's a gender imbalance in favour of women in the kind of home and the actual kind of on the ground action, but then in the sort of leadership roles and the professional roles, there's a gender imbalance the other way, and there's more men?
Which is, yeah, and this is shown up by the number of women doing unpaid work. I think the figure is about 60% more unpaid work is done by females than men. And that's huge. That's from the ONS in 2016, that study. And it is this thing about what people are willing to ask for and what they're willing to be in charge of, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that reflected in the GP world. I know we see that in the vetty world as well. So I don't know if that's the same in the GP world.
More thinking, there is a gender difference in the GP world, but in terms of sustainability in the home and in the workplace, there's quite a lot of studies on sort of pro-environmental behaviour and the traits that different genders can have. But actually, a lot of it can be broken down into age as well. Certainly some of the papers that I've seen and some of the academic stuff suggest that it's actually women in their 40s who are the driving force behind some of the certainly pro-environmental behaviour in the home, and partly because they've had this nurturing role and their kids are now getting ready to leave home, and so they're now looking at how can I nurture some of the wider world. Now, actually, from a male's point of view, and I don't know whether Ed would agree with this, is that I think that there are some dads who are much more hands-on than they used to be, and actually some of our inner beliefs of reusable nappies in terms of how the children change our lives means that actually we are being more, as a gender, being more pro-environmental than perhaps we were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I would be optimistic for the future, as you know, the roles within the home do become more equalised. I appreciate that they're not equalised yet, but as men take a bigger role in the households, then I think that there is going to be more of those sort of behaviour traits being demonstrated and rewarded. So actually, I look at it as, you know, I try and provide for my family, sort of, you know, financially or, you know, socially or whatever. But actually, part of that is outside of the home. And if I can be more pro-environmental, it means that I'm actually influencing the wider world. Now, with a GP hat on, I know that there's no human health without planetary health. And I also know that from a family point of view, that there's no family life if there's not planetary health as well. So I think that I'm actually optimistic that there will be more men with pro-environmental behaviours from now on.
Ed, in your experience, kind of, you know, setting up a sustainable festival, how's that? Has there been a noticeable gender imbalance?
I don't know. Not really. I think the reality is, I mean, I can't talk from a perspective of studies and science and all these different things, and I would sound slightly stupid if I tried, frankly, because I wouldn't know what I was talking about. So just speaking as, you know, if I can represent my entire side of the species and just say, as a normal bloke who, you know, who clearly likes rugby, I haven't quite taken into account how many rugby things in the back of my office, but likes hanging out with his children and, you know, and likes being with his family and does what he does, like, you know, I think like a lot of men. I think actually what's been quite interesting is where, if you take, is there a gender imbalance in terms of driving sustainability? Yes, absolutely, but it's not restricted to sustainability. If I look at my mates and family life, if you're a single bloke, you decide where you go and what you do, and a lot of men that I know, and I'm sure at times I have been one of them, will be asked, what are you doing at the weekend? I don't know, my wife hasn't told me yet, is a fairly standard answer to a lot of questions. And it's not because necessarily they don't want to be engaged, but if, for example, the mother is at home and therefore has to do much more planning, looking after the children, the husband just goes to work and comes back, goes to work and comes back, actually there is a formula for the home that is run. It doesn't just happen. There's a huge amount of work that a mother or whoever is the primary carer needs to put in to make sure that the children are appropriately cared for and dressed and at school, and even more so now with homeschooling and lockdown, that actually for all of the structure that work life gives you, you just turn up and then you come home again. There isn't, you know, you don't need to plan it. It's, you turn up and it's planned for you. So there is that, and there has always been that. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying what it is. And so for me, actually, what I found was with a lot of my friends and men that I know, it's not that they don't want to be engaged or whatever. It's just they haven't flipped the switch to engage themselves. So, and it's little steps. It's exactly what it's all about. So for me, changing things, my wife has been on board with all of this for like forever, you know, and it's taken me a long time to get on board. And Freya was very instrumental in that, as I say, but, you know, I think you seize the opportunity, and it's a bit like when we're parenting, we have this rule in the family where we try and catch people doing it right. So you reward positive behaviors and catch them when they're doing it right. You don't complain about when they're doing the same thing wrong all the time. and expect it to improve. And men are the same. So catch us when we're doing it right, and encourage the positive things that are happening, and you will see continued positive things to happen. So for us, it is like, we've got the eco bricks talk coming up. We love an eco brick. I mean, we do lots of them. Arguably, we should be buying less single-use plastics that end up going into eco bricks, and we're trying to do that as well. But that in itself, we now have a little zone it's hung up on an elastic band on a hook in the kitchen, and the kids have to now wash all of we do it as a family, and we wash all the plastics. So if it's got ham in it or something, the kids go, oh, this is disgusting. Well, you chose it, you wanted to eat it, you therefore have to clean it, and then we put it in. And we give it to a lady in Tunbridge Wells who makes furniture out of them and all these amazing things. But it's little things making a difference and talking about it. So if you're with your mates, like, we had a Wendy house when we moved into our house where we live now in the garden that the other people left behind, and the kids played with that. Then we got chickens, who I love my chicken, and find very cathartic. But so I put roosting bars in, and I adapted it all, turned it into a chicken coop. Then after a period of years, it fell apart, slightly rotted. Then we got some rescue hens recently, and I had to divide the run up to keep the flock separately. So we ripped it all down. I've chopped it all to pieces, and it is now a wood store. So each time it's transferring to something else, and you talk to your mates about it and why you're doing it, and they say, oh, we could upcycle this. But I think now is a real time of opportunity, because lockdown, which has been horrendous, I know, for so many people, and people dying, and it is a horrible thing and a scary thing for some people. And we've all got our own commercial worries about jobs and things like that, and I totally get that. But actually, from a family point of view, change will come when we reset the values of what family is about. And I think that is the fundamental shift that can happen. We can talk science till we're blue in the face, because we've all known the science for decades. It hasn't changed anything. What changes things is fundamental changes in how we live. And lockdown has forced that, because you can't go to work and you can't do these things, and we have to share roles and we have to do all this stuff. And I hope for a fundamental change in the shift of how family works, and indeed how life works, what the new norm. One of the worrying things for me is not about where are the men. One of the worrying things is that one of the Carnival Cruises, one of the big cruise liner companies, have just announced they've had a 600% increase in sales on cruises because of the fact that they reckon they'll be open again in August, which just shows that no one's learned anything. The human race is full of history where we never learn from our history. Yeah. And that's my big hope, is that the new norm will be different.
God, I thought the cruise industry would be kind of there were so many people stuck on cruise ships getting corona, weren't there? But I thought the people off. But Libby, you were sort of nodding along there, and it sounded like you had something to add to that.
There was a lovely comment that I just wanted to pick up in. The comment thread's really active. It's brilliant, guys. I'm reading all the comments as we're going. There was something said by, I believe, Michael. It's quite far back now, so forgive me if I've got that wrong. But there's been a little discussion going on about something you said, Ed, about this idea of, you find it's okay to do these things. Do all men feel that these things are okay to do? And I think the one point that I just wanted to pick up on was that there is more risk to men in terms of their gender identity in doing something that's cognitively linked to being female, to being feminine. And this green feminine stereotype is the problem, because like you've just done something really rugged and manly, which is hammering nails into repurposed chicken shed / Wendy house. So that's okay. But there was loads of study done in the 90s. But did you feel manly doing it?
I felt manly when I came away with all my fingers,
yeah, and the chickens love you. That's all that counts. But there's a little bit in the thread about whether or not certain values like being pro-social, being altruistic are female. And there is this research that says, unfortunately, they are more likely, females are more likely to be empathetic, females are put in the caregiving roles, females are therefore more future focused on the end impact of things, and that's where they've gravitated towards more green, more eco-friendly, and that's not a stereotype. That is just brain science. That is just that. And there's also a lot of data around the threat to men is bigger for coming out of their gender identity because society punishes men more for doing things that aren't seen to be masculine. Females, we are able to bridge that gap a little more easily. I'm raising 3 feisty females here. They've all got neutral toys. You know, they're allowed to do rough and tumble things. Are boys allowed to play with dolls these days? Not so much. You know, there's still more punishment given societally to boys stepping outside of gender roles than there is females, and that has a massive impact in this field because it just means men are less inclined to associate with something that isn't in group, isn't with the group membership rules of their gender identity. And that's just a little sidebar to what you were saying, Ed, was everything you're talking about probably could be embraced by lots of males, but some of the other things, they're linked with veganism, they're linked with vegetarianism, still seen as feminine, and that does cause a problem for some people. There's a lot of data around that.
Matt, you wanted to come in there.
Yeah, there's again, and from a green taxonomy point of view, so there's basically 5 groups of behaviours that are seen as environmental behaviours. Some of them are around avoiding harm, some of them are around conserving, influencing others, taking initiatives and transforming. And it depends on which of these is being done as to whether they're seen as male or female. So, for example, there are some caring roles which I think that you're saying are more female orientated, but there are some in terms of, say, conserving resources and being less wasteful, that you could quite as easily badge as being a male behaviour, in the sense that, you know, if I go to work, we know, for example, food, you know, a third of food is wasted on a global scale. If I was going to work and knowing that a third of my hard work was being wasted by somebody else, actually I'd be quite annoyed at that. And I think that, so from a green behaviour, from a conserving resource efficiency, resource use point of view, I think that you can badge some of the environmental behaviours as male if you wanted to, or at least appeal to the male psyche of not being necessarily destructive and wasteful.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask a question here, and you know, it's kind of deliberately provocative. Do men care? Like, obviously, you two do, and I guess you can only speak for yourselves. But do you know, I feel like my husband, love him, like he's incredibly supportive. You know, we did our year buying nothing new, but he went along with it, you know, for a quiet life, I think, and I think he's quite happy to let me get on and do whatever I'm into, because, you know, like I say, a sort of, you know, a quiet life and things. But I don't think if I hadn't been the driving force, we would be where, you know, he wouldn't have taken it on as his thing, and we wouldn't kind of be here. Do you think that's general of men? I don't know.
I think that I've probably got a group of friends, and of course that's self-selecting, where I would say that more than half of the men are proactive, are very involved, both from, you know, a family point of view, but also from a green behaviour point of view, and within the home, whether that be recycling, redoing, reducing, you know, waste, all sorts of things. So I think that I'm actually very lucky to be in a bubble with people who have got, they're not similar-minded to me at all, but they have got, I think, quite a lot of pro-green behaviours. Now, whether that's because I've influenced them and they know that, you know, I've got a friend who, you know, you go to a party and they say, I'm really sorry, but we've got plastic knives and forks, although I have used them 67 times. So I think that there are, I think that men can become very strong role models, and certainly I think that you know, I'm optimistic that we can, you know, step up to the mark with and be more sustainable within the home. So yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Ed, how about you?
I'm trying to decide whether to give you the political answer or the honest answer. I think the honest answer is that a lot of men that I know, and it's difficult because it's not a one side or another. It's because there's so much mixture in the middle. You can't either be leading it or therefore you're not doing it.
Yes.
And so yes, I know most people probably that I know would definitely be in favour of, you pick your arguments, and if this is going to make the home a calm and happy place, then I will happily go along with it. And that's not, but that in itself isn't a bad thing if progress is still happening. Actively stopping it is a negative thing. And indeed, that can lend itself towards doing things that make a positive difference. So I think if we come back to, it doesn't need to be a polarized thing. This needs to be about, as we've talked about all the way along, it's sustainable-ish. It's not sustainable or not sustainable, it's sustainable-ish. And we are all trying to make a difference. I know for a fact that we are not 100% sustainable in our household. I mean, it just simply isn't the case. And there are things that we have done and they have progressed. But the way that we've actually made that progress happen is we've tried not to have, I think there are times when my wife would like it that I step forward and I'm head of the household and I say, right, we're going to go and do this. Come on, everyone. We're going to go and, plant a whole rainforest in the field next door and so on. But actually, what we do is we get together as a family. There's 5 of us. And sometimes the family really like what they call family council. And sometimes like, oh, I can't believe we've got to do this again. But we sit there together and we talk about changes that we're going to make. And if someone's got an issue, so like, for example, it was one of my son, Toby, he became a vegetarian when he was 10. And it was because his chicken got killed by a fox. And so he cried for 3 days and 3 nights pretty much solidly. And he refused to let us bury Maria because he'd prayed, and Jesus rose again on the 3rd day. And so until 3 days had gone, he didn't want Maria to come back to life and be underground. So, but that changed him fundamentally because he looked at it and he was talking about these things with me and saying, look, I understand the fox needs to eat chicken, but I think about how upset I was that Maria had been killed. Well, if her family found out that she'd been killed, they'd be all really upset, or any of the animals that I've eaten, and I don't need to eat them to live. So he made a choice at that point to become a vegetarian and has been ever since. And he's 14 and a half now, and he won't eat Haribo, and he won't do this, and he won't do that. And he's very passionate about it. The rest of the family isn't, but he is. And so what we did as a family is we went down to discussing that's what he's passionate about. Freya wanted to boycott McDonald's because of the deforestation, even though she loves a burger. When she was little, she was asked what her favourite vegetable was, and she said sausages. So she's definitely not going vegan anytime soon. But we went through all of that, and so she wanted to do that. So we do it as a family, and we kind of try and chip in. So we've reduced the number of meals we have in a week. So we might eat meat twice a week now, I reckon, probably on average. We do our eco bricks. We do these different things, but we do them together. And I have instigated things, and Ali's instigated things, the kids have instigated things, because then it doesn't become about the dad's not done it, or the mum's not done it, or whatever, or who's leading it. We're all doing it. And it's as much as an important thing for the children as it is for the parents. In fact, more so, because they're going to be alive longer into it, and it's about their future. So for me, what can we all be doing? And just encourage each other when we do something. So it comes back to that small changes and catch them doing something right, encouraging them in it. Because I think I understand the nature of the question and we want to debate and stuff, but if we get too like this about it, then you and we want to all be on the same side, even if some people are playing catch up, that's fine.
And I think what you said there about the whole family making these decisions, because I'm aware that I'm kind of here in, all this stuff I've done and the research and things, and the rest of the family are probably here, and I haven't done a very good job of communicating to them where I am, and I've just kind of come in and done things and changed things and then got cross at them for putting something in the wrong bin when I haven't actually told them why they need to put that stuff in that bin and all that sort of thing. So I do think that we have a role, maybe, if we are the kind of lead on the sustainability in our house, to make sure that we're really bringing that that sort of family choice element into it, and that we're really involving everybody and getting everybody on board in the decisions that we're making. I think, you know, I hold my hands up. I think I'm quite guilty of just like, it's quicker and easier to get on and do it, and, you know, they'll kind of come with me. But Libby, have you got anything to add on that?
Definitely. It's really interesting. This is something that is, again, it's a society thing. But for example, there was a campaign with Roosevelt where they depicted him wearing an apron to mock his interest in sustainability and the fact that some of his policies were very pro conservation at the time. And obviously Roosevelt was president from 1900 to 1909, so this has been going on a while. But there is this tendency to denigrate, and a lot of the language used when people are attacking males from being interested in this is very derogatorily feminizing them. And so it comes back to this gender identity piece. And I think making that a bedrock within the home, where, and I think Malcolm just said in the comments that his mum was a really strong role model. And, you know, this is, I think, something that we can really get on board with, is making it part of the family, making it part of your lexicon, that you are talking to your kids as in a way that really makes it accessible to both genders, and it isn't a feminine centric issue, because it shouldn't be. You're absolutely right, it shouldn't be, but it is. And they've proven that, unfortunately, again and again. They did a real simple branding exercise where they changed the name of a charity from I think they called it Friends of Nature to start with, and it had a very female focused logo, howling at the moon, and it was like red and grey, and they changed the name from Friends of Nature to Fun for Wilderness Rangers or something. And donations leapt up from men. You know, men weren't incentivized to donate to this charity when it looked more female.
Yeah.
And that's where you know, and people that are doing the branding and people that are doing this imagery that make it accessible, because males won't want to go against their gender identity piece, you know, and they've proven that you can influence buying behavior by reaffirming masculinity with it, or threatening it with your branding. And I find that fascinating. So yeah, the home's going to be a big place to build that confidence, build that feeling that it's okay to be interested in this.
And from that, like how then do we again, I'm really aware, as Ed said, these are, you know, like polarizing things, and we're being massively stereotypical and all this sort of thing. But like how do we get our men folk on board? Because it sounds like from a branding and marketing perspective, you know, retailers need to be marketing these things differently, and that kind of seems stupid to me, to be marketing the same thing differently to two different genders. And is there something that needs to change in the language that we're using, you know, in the sort of on the ground sustainability, to make it more sort of accessible for men? What role can we play in that?
Yes, absolutely. The proof, unfortunately, and again, I think Emma said this in the comments, men get more triggered by science and business, so they will be more incentivized. Again, it comes back to that what's your why. The Simon Sinek book, Start With Why, is everything about this. If they've got a bigger, it's unfortunate, but there is a gender split, and there is a difference between what males and females are triggered by. In answer to your question, Jen, about what we can do now, because obviously we're dealing with the historical situation, aren't we, where people have been brought up a certain way, they have or haven't been influenced by these things yet. So in answer to how we get people on board now, it really is finding the reasons why they would think it important. So like Freya with the orangutans and going through those cupboards, you know, there was a big enough why. Like with the chicken, there was a big enough why for them to be interested. All my kids are raised vegetarian, or pescatarian more correctly, because that's a fairer way that I felt was to introduce them to the idea that that's an animal on your plate, was to give them the option of to not eat an animal first, and then ask them if they wanted to introduce meat. And all three of them have said no, because I've given them enough data along the way to say, this is what it is. It's up to you. Fill your boots. If you want to eat a sausage roll, go nuts. You know, it's not a problem for me, but each created their own why. And they're all happy as veggie with some fish. and that's, you know, again, this is about building it into the family, isn't it?
So is there a role for us, and this is to Matt and Ed, you know, if we are finding that, you know, we're you know, leading on sustainability in our homes, do you think there's a role for us to be having more to be kind of opening up more conversations about your why, or, you know, whether you share your own why and kind of invite other people to invite your partner or whatever to chip in? Like how can we start helping people to make those connections and thinking a little bit more about their purpose and their why? Matt, do you want to go first?
Yes, I think certainly in my household, and I know that my wife's listening to this, so I have to be slightly careful, that I'm by far and away the driving force. And I think that, that I'll want to do something and she'll go along with me rather than it necessarily being the other way around. And, you know, she's fabulous at sort of nodding in agreement when I make some slightly wild suggestions to her. But I think that, as Libby said, actually, men do want to do this if it's framed in the right way, or if it's you know, marketed in a positive light. And I think Ed said that, you know, it's all about rewarding positive behaviour. So I think that actually men can and will and do these things, and I think that it's showing the rewards in their language. Or, and this is not a gender split. This is actually, you know, can be split into, you know, one of 1,000 subgroups of, you know, men at this age and women at that age and all the rest of it. So I think there's a lot of subgroups within it. But I do think that we as men do step up to things, particularly, as I said before, about sort of, you know, waste and resource use. And I think it's trying to frame it in the right way. But I think that it's not just us influencing within our own home, but it's also influencing within our friends groups and within a wider sphere. Because sometimes it's that peer pressure that if I do something and show it to somebody else, actually it means that they can then do it as well. And it's that sort of very positive, proactive. I use the phrase, don't tell me, show me. Don't tell me you're going to do something, show me that you've done it. Don't tell me you're going to reduce your waste, show me what the results are. And I think that that's very important, so that we can demonstrate it both to our, you know, the people in our houses, but also a wider group of people.
Brilliant. Ed, you got anything to come in on that?
Yeah, so well, a couple of things actually. One is going back to what Lily was saying about marketing and why they do products and everything else. The reason there are campaigns, I used to run a magazine called Marketing Week many years ago, back in the day when I had some hair, not much, but some. You know, the reason that they market so strongly for men to feel like men and buy manly things is because there's more money in it. If they package everything separately and sell everything separately, then everyone buys it separately, which means you have two sets of products and not shared products. And that is money. That is why it happens. And you are, you know, what we're talking about here really in terms of changing the way that people perceive things and doing things is pushing against the biggest machine in the world, which is media. And the media communication of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, and, you know, and ribbons and kittens versus power tools and press ups. I mean, it's all bollocks, but it is the way that it is designed, and that is what you're pushing against. And that's the peer pressure of men at work. Oh, does your missus tell you what to, you know, all that sort of rubbish that goes on, still goes on. You know, I remember being at work when we found out that Ali was pregnant with Tobes, and I couldn't wait, you know, to we didn't know we were having a boy at the time, but when I announced to my colleagues that we were expecting a baby, more than a few of them were like, "Oh, that's another man's life ruined. You'll want to stay at work more then, fella," and all this sort of stuff. That was a, you know, oh good Lord, pain in the arse. I'm going to go and do more work. So there is a lot of media stuff that we need to fight against in terms of delivering, I think, a better perception of what it means to be a man or a woman or whatever, or not saying that one thing has to be one and one thing has to be another. That's the bigger issue. And the way that we can do that is by voting with our pounds, shillings and pence, like Jarvis was talking about. I mean, I obviously wouldn't get through a 25 quid bottle of shampoo very quickly, but I could probably do that. It could last me the rest of my life. But But it's true though, if we change where we buy and change what we do, the fastest way to change the marketing messaging we receive will be when people see it doesn't work anymore. That's what will change it. It's about influencing people by doing that. And so that was my thing for Libby's point. And then from a perspective of what I say, I mean, I don't think I lead the charge in the family on sustainability. I like to think that I'm an active voice in it. But I definitely was playing catch up with Ali and the kids to start off with. I mean, I've obviously now we've planted a forest and other things, so you know I'm catching up. But you're doing things in the areas you can influence. So we've changed our electricity supplier to obviously to being 100% sustainable. It's one of the, as Jarvis said, it's one of the easiest things you can do. It's so satisfying because it's so quick and effortless, and also we're actually saving money as a result of doing it. We have consistently saved money since we switched. They give us an update. You know, we can see what carbon's been sequestered by this, that, and the other, or all these different things that are happening, and that is an encouragement because you can see the individual progress that you are making, and it's effortless. So let's do the effortless things first, the low-hanging fruit. Make the little changes, and they in turn can help you build into bigger changes. And that was the whole premise really of why I launched the One Earth show, was because most people, I mean, I went for a meeting with some guys from Extinction Rebellion when they were in London, and just to talk about what I was doing and just to see how they all worked and everything else. But the people we surveyed, most of the people that we do all our research on for the best part of a year would run in the other direction rather than be associated with people that would glue themselves to Pall Mall or shout at people in the street. You know, you're going to have your 5% at the bottom that would, if the world was literally on fire in front of them, would still demand a burger. And you've got the people at the other end who are already so green and so living it. And then you've got everyone in the middle. And it's the people in the middle that are the battleground. And most of them just don't know what to do. And small changes, if you know, Greta Thunberg always talks about, if everyone makes a change and it all adds up together, the groundswell will be enormous.
Yeah.
And so that's what we've got to encourage is, if we hear about some small, easy thing, thank you, Jarvis, I've just seen your but if we do one small thing and then we find out about it, tell everyone, tell our friends. You know, we saved money. That's the way to get them to make it happen. Fine. But it's those little things that spread out. They're the ripples in the pond that we can make. We can't change big things, but together we can all change something.
Yeah, and you know, that's one of the things I've been saying this on every talk. We've got this pledge wall for the festival, and you know, like if we've got, I don't know, nearly 40 pledges on there, and hopefully that's a way of really visualizing that all these individual actions really do kind of stack up to make a difference. But we'll just quickly go to the questions because I'm aware we're kind of going to run out of time. And I don't know whether this is one to open up probably to the chat as well. But Michael's asked, does anyone have a perspective to bring from a same-sex relationship? Because I think that would be quite interesting, because we wouldn't have the kind of gender divide in terms maybe of expectations around, you know, societal expectations and traditional expectations around housework and stuff like that. But I personally don't have any perspective on it. I don't know if anybody else on the panel does. But
yeah, I've got some very good friends, and they are in quite traditional type looking gender roles. They're a female couple, and one goes to work in the city and the other stays home with a baby. And what I've seen is an almost identical patterning of exactly what the normal battlegrounds are. And I do think so much of it is time dependent, you know, and there is this perception that if you're at home with a baby, you've got all the time in the world, which, as we all know, is complete rubbish. and that's, you know, forced from a work perspective, I think. But I don't know how true that would play out to anyone else. That's my N=1 scenario.
And I guess, and again, this is massive stereotyping, but you know, I guess the natural thing is to focus on what's in front of you. And if you are spending more time at home and more time with the kids, that's what you're going to focus on. And if you're spending more time at work, you know, that's where your focus is going to be. And I know that's boiling it down to be massively simplistic. But one other question, and Abby, this might be something for Emma to dive into in her chat on sustainability in the workplace later on in the week. How easy have you found making changes within the workplace as things can have a tendency to be more male-centered there? Has anybody got, Matt, have you got anything to say on that?
Yes, I think, again, it's that there are, personally, when I speak to businesses, you can make just as many changes in a male-orientated business as a female-orientated. But I think, going back to what Libby was saying, it's about how you present it and how you market it and how you sell it. And it's the phrase of language. You say to people, you don't want to be wasteful, do you? Or you find other ways to sort of, tap into what's important to them. And so if you're speaking to a finance director, actually finance is their number one. They're not really interested in other things. So if they can save money, but I know that they're going to be saving carbon, for example, actually both of us win. So it's about trying to find the right language in different workplaces. And I think you only get that by actually talking to the owners and the managers and the staff within them, to find out what is actually, as Libby says, their why. You go along from that point of view.
I don't know how everyone else is feeling. Like I like things to be, nicely tied up in a bow, and everyone to have a nice, a really clear roadmap as to how we get from here to here and how we kind of solve this issue. And I feel like what we've done is opened this big can of worms, and we've had a really and I think this isn't going to be a nice, easily solved situation because there's so many traditional and societal things that need to change. But maybe have like, I love to give people actions to do at the kind of end of everything, because I feel like, well, that's just the thing that makes me feel happy. So have we each got like a concrete action that somebody can take away from this and can do, that's looking around, I guess, kind of inclusivity around how we come together as families to make changes? I think that might be really helpful for people to take away. Libby, have you got anything? Putting you all on the spot here, sorry.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we were going to, Ellie West and I were going to be speaking at BSAVA this year for a whole day on behalf of SPIVs about sustainability. And one of the biggest things that we identified is it's find out who you need to talk to. Who do I need to speak to in my place of work to make these changes is the first step. Because very often, as Matt says, it could be someone in finance, it could be someone in marketing, because sometimes the PR element of going more green is really beneficial to a company. Is that the person that you need to just nudge to get your company to do more stuff? And if you can just identify who holds the reins, who's the one with the power to make this happen, because a lot of the time, as Ed said, the changes are massively beneficial financially as well. You're saving money if you do some really basic things. So that would be my urge to everybody, is get active, look around you and look at who is it that holds the power, because those are the people that can make things change.
Brilliant. Ed, have you got like an action or something concrete for us to take away and to do within our lives and our families?
Everybody get tickets. I think there is, I think what I would say is, I probably would steer away in my case talking about the workplace, but just going back to men, if we ignore what the panel's called, and if we focus on just inclusivity within a family, whatever your family setup is,
yes,
you try and get everybody at the same level and the same level of engagement and enthusiasm, then I think talking about what you're passionate about is a great start. So I would get together, and so when we talked about it, Toby's thing is animals, Molly's thing is animals, Freya's thing was deforestation, and we can talk about the different things that really make an impact. And then you find a way that you can do something as a family to change your behavior that positively impacts that. And I think that's a good way of getting people engaged who aren't. So you can talk about it from a monetary saving point of view. So change your energy supplier, look at all the main bills that you have in your house. And is there someone you can move to who is more sustainable and probably cheaper? Then you're saving money. It's good stewardship generally for your household, but also you're making a difference without having to change everything about your life. A good start. And the other one is get people encouraged. And I would also obviously advocate that you all sign up for the One Earth show, where you'll be able to find out lots of information on our weekly newsletter or any of the information bits and get prizes and all sorts, as we're giving away loads of different things through products and stuff. So that's a good place to learn. But I think start with conversation and find out, rather than pushing what you care about and what fires you up, get everybody else to tell you what they care about and see how you can make a difference.
Yeah.
I'd agree with both of those, but I'd also say about educating yourself. And I think that there are a lot of good and useful, whether it be online guides, whether it be your book, Jen, that has got a lot of tips that you can start small. You can make these little changes that give you empower you to then make further changes and increase what you're able to do. And it just means that each of us are starting at a different point on that journey. And there's no reason, I don't think, that there should end up being a gender divide from this. I think that we've all got that opportunity to decide where we spend our money and what we do with our time. And I think that if we can be aware of what we can do, but then more importantly doing it. It's don't just tell me, show me you've done it.
Yes, yeah, and I think I know Teresa's just commented on there from Sisters Against Plastic, and they're going to do a talk. I can't remember when it is this week, but they talk a lot about doing like a plastic diet and having a plastic audit. And I try and look for opportunities to do things as a family. So doing a plastic audit as a family, like saying to the kids, all the plastic is going to go in this box here, and they'll probably become like your plastic police and berate you for putting your packet of sweets that you were trying to hide like in the bin. And then sit down as a family and go through it and try and get their buy-in to say, well, oh look, we've got all these fruit shoot bottles and I don't think they're really great. What can we do about that? And or like if we go out for a walk, we take the litter picker, probably not at the moment, but we'll take our litter pickers with us normally, and that's just kind of a thing that we do. And if you've got younger kids, you can talk to them about why you're doing it and how it ends up in the ocean and all those sorts of things. And obviously, if you're going out for a family walk, then your kind of your partner's coming along with you and sort of absorbing that information as well. But I think the kind of take home point for that I'm taking from this, I'd be interested to hear what everyone else is that kind of inclusivity, that communication, that just bringing everyone with us for the ride, and starting small and rewarding all those positives. You guys have nailed it putting your links in there. Because I think there are a few people who can't access
all over it.
So Libby, just tell us verbally how we can find you.
So I'm at chemkaren.com, which is my website for Tame Your Brain. If anyone wants help bringing this into their workplace, I'm really, really happy to help. I do general brain bending as well. If you want personal coaching, I do that. And I also train teams in how to be more sustainable.
Brilliant. Ed, give the...
So that's chemkaren.com.
Brilliant. Thank you. Ed, give the One Earth Show a big plug.
Oh yes, One Earth Show is in February of next year at the NEC. It's oneearthshow.com. Please do go and have a look and see how you can register and get involved. We're always looking to actively encourage more people basically to make one small change. And obviously I'll be at the campfire later, the guitar's ready. I did promise. So excellent times.
Thanks. Brilliant. And Matt?
So I'm Matt Sawyer, and I'm at seasustainability.co.uk, doing particular work around environmental consultancy with carbon literacy and carbon footprinting as probably my biggest babies. Oh,
amazing. Thank you so much, guys. I knew we'd go over time and we could chat about this for quite some time, I think. And so amazing. Thank you, everyone, for all your contributions to the chat. And we can carry on the chat in the Facebook group if people want to do that. And thank you all. And we're back on, I think, at 6 with an eco-brick session. So if you were wondering what Ed was talking about when he was on about eco-bricking, come at 6 and Lucy's going to be talking to you what eco-bricks are, why we might want to do them, and kind of how to do them. So thank you ever so much, guys. You absolute superstars. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.